I own this city. Those were the first words out of the defendant's mouth in my courtroom. Not good morning, not your honor, just that. I was sitting on the bench in Providence Municipal Court, looking down at a young tech billionaire who acted like the whole room was his personal app. He was 29 years old. He had a sharp haircut that looked like it cost more than most people's rent. His suit was a deep black with a tiny silver pin on the lapel. His watch looked like a small, shiny spaceship. He leaned back like he was in a podcast studio, not a court. Behind him, I saw it. A line of lawyers, 12 of them, 12, like a parade of expensive suits, briefcases, and perfect teeth. They sat in two neat rows. Some had tablets open, some had thick folders. One even had a portable printer on a rolling bag. And right across from him sat the victim, a woman with tired eyes and a faded coat. She held a folder like it was the only solid thing in her life. Her hands shook a little when she turned a page. I could feel the whole courtroom breathing in slow, like everyone knew something big was about to happen. I kept my voice calm, because that is my job, but inside, I was already thinking, this man is about to learn something he never coded into his life. If you believe justice should be equal for everyone, you'll want to see what happens next. The bailiff stood tall and loud. All rise. We all rose, then sat, and the room settled into that special court quiet, the kind that feels like a storm holding its breath. The bailiff said, Case 2026, TR 41872, State of Rhode Island versus Axel Vance. Axel Vance stood up slowly, like he was doing me a favor. I looked at him and said, Good morning, Mr. Vance. He gave a small smile, like I was a waiter. I said, This is traffic court, but your choices brought you here. You understand that? One of his lawyers started to speak right away. He was tall, with gray hair and a voice like smooth ice. Your Honor, I raised my hand. I did not shout. I did not need to. I'll hear from you in a moment. First, I want to look at the people in front of me. I turned my eyes to the woman on the other side. She stood up fast, like she was afraid she would be forgotten if she sat too long. I said, Ma'am, please tell me your name. She swallowed. Maribel Torres. Her voice was soft, but it had something strong under it, like a small bell. I said, Miss Torres, what brings you here today? She held up her folder. Your Honor, I'm here because of what he did. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know fancy words, but I know what happened. I nodded. That's enough. Tell me in your own words. Maribel took a breath. I work nights at Harborline Grocery. I stock shelves and I clean. I also take care of my dad. He had a stroke. He can't talk well anymore, but he knows me. I'm the only one he has. She paused and rubbed her thumb against the edge of the folder, like it was a worry stone. I was walking home after my shift, she went on. It was raining. I was crossing at the light. I had the walk sign, and then a car came fast and cut the turn. It hit me. The room made a small sound all at once. Not words, just shock. Maribel's eyes got wet. I went down hard. My phone flew. My groceries spilled. And the car, it didn't stop. It kept going. I looked at Axel Vance. He stared straight ahead, bored. I said, Ms. Torres, were you hurt? She nodded. My knee got messed up. The doctor said it was a tear. A tear means the inside got ripped. I can't stand long. I can't work my normal shift. And my dad, he needs my pay. I leaned forward a little. Did you get help? A man from a bus stop ran over, she said. He called 911, and he picked up my phone. He gave it back to me. My screen was cracked, but it still worked. I said, And how do you know the defendant is the driver? Maribel lifted a paper from the folder. The police found the car. It has his company logo on the door. And I got a message from someone, from his assistant. One of the lawyers shifted in his seat. Axel finally spoke, loud enough for the whole room. She's being dramatic. People fall all the time. I felt the air change. I looked at him. Mr. Vance, you will not speak out of turn. He shrugged. I thought this was America. I kept my voice even. It is, and in America, we take turns. This is your first warning. I heard a soft cough from the gallery. I saw a few heads turn. People were watching now. Axel's lawyers started arranging papers like they were building a wall. Axel adjusted his cuff and whispered something to the lawyer beside him. The lawyer smiled like it was all going to be fine. I looked back at Maribel. "Ms. Torres, you said you got a message from his assistant. We will get to that." I turned to the bailiff. "Call the officer." A patrol officer stepped forward. Officer Dina Holloway. She had a clean uniform and a face that looked tired of excuses. I said, "Officer Holloway, tell me what your report shows." Officer Holloway said, "Your Honor, this was reported as a hit and run. The victim described a matte gray sports car with a bright blue strip on the back. We checked traffic cameras near the intersection. We located a vehicle matching that description at a private parking garage. The vehicle was registered to Vance Frontier Tech." Axel's lead lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, my client denies any wrongdoing. There is no clear identification." I held up my hand again. "You will speak, counselor, but first we deal with facts." Axel let out a short laugh. "Facts? You mean vibes." That was the minor disrespect. Quick, sharp, like a small slap. I turned my eyes to him. "Mr. Vance, you're in my courtroom, not on social media. Second warning." He lifted both hands in fake peace. Sure, whatever makes you feel powerful." I heard a woman in the gallery whisper, "Oh my God." Officer Holloway continued, "We also recovered damage on the front right side of the vehicle. Paint transfer, that means the car picked up paint from what it hit." I said, "What color?" "Off-white," she said. I looked at Maribel. "Ms. Torres, what color was your coat that night?" Maribel held out the coat she wore. It was off-white, stained at the knee. The room went quiet again. I said, "Officer, do you have evidence number 1? She handed a photo packet to the clerk. The clerk passed it to me. I looked at the pictures. Close-up shots of the car, scratches, dents, bits of off-white paint like chalk on metal. I held up the photo. "Mr. Vance, this vehicle belongs to your company?" Axel smirked. "It belongs to my fleet. I have a lot of cars, like, a lot." I said, "Were you driving it that night?" His lawyer jumped in fast. "Your Honor, Mr. Vance cannot recall who was driving which company vehicle at that time." Axel waved his hand like he was swatting a fly. "I was at a launch party. People saw me. I have receipts." I nodded slowly. "We'll see what you have. But I also see what the state has." That should have been the moment he got careful. Instead, he leaned forward. This was the authority challenge. This was him trying to bend the room. He said, "Judge, do you know who I am? My company built the traffic system this city uses. I could call the mayor right now and have this little show shut down." I looked at him for a long second. Then I said, calm as a glass of water, "Mr. Vance, in Providence Municipal Court, the only thing that shuts this down is the truth." He grinned. "Cute line." His lawyers shifted again. One of them whispered hard in his ear like, "Please stop." I turned to Officer Holloway. "Evidence number 2. Officer Holloway nodded. "Your Honor, after the incident, the victim received messages. We obtained consent to review them. The messages came from a phone number linked to an employee at Vance Frontier Tech." Axel's lead lawyer stood up. "Objection." I looked at him. "Counselor, I'm not here to play games. I'm here to understand what happened. Sit." The lawyer sat, tight-lipped. Officer Holloway read from a printed page. At 2:14 a.m., the message says, "Hi, Maribel. We can make this easier. Mr. Vance doesn't want trouble. Name a number." The courtroom made another sound, low, angry. Maribel looked down, ashamed, like she had done something wrong just by receiving the message. I felt my jaw tighten. Officer Holloway continued. At 2:19 a.m., the victim replies, "I just want my knee fixed and my payback. I can't work." Then, Officer Holloway said, the reply from the company number says, "We can pay you now if you don't come to court. No police, no report. Keep it private." I looked straight at Axel. "Mr. Vance, are you aware of this message?" He tilted his head. "That's just business. Settlements happen." I said, A settlement is when people work things out the right way. This looks like an attempt to hide. He laughed, and it had no warmth. Hide? Please. I'm the most visible person in the state. My face is on billboards. Then he added loud, and she should be grateful someone like me even offered her money. Maribel flinched. That hurt her. I could see it. That was the direct insult. He aimed it right at her. I took a breath. Mr. Vance, you do not get to talk about gratitude in a case where someone is injured and left in the rain. He rolled his eyes. Your Honor, with respect, this is small time. I brought 12 lawyers because I don't lose. Ever. I said, this court is not a scoreboard. Axel leaned closer, voice dripping with a smile. Everything is a scoreboard. Officer Holloway cleared her throat. Your Honor, there is more. I said, go on. Evidence number 3, she said. A witness came forward. The witness works at the parking garage where the vehicle was found. He reported that at 3:05 a.m., Mr. Vance arrived alone and demanded the car be cleaned immediately. Axel's lawyer stood up again. Your Honor, hearsay. I looked at him. Bring the witness in. A young man walked to the stand. He wore a simple work shirt with a stitched name tag that said Jalen. His hands were rough. His eyes were nervous, but he tried to be brave. I said, Sir, tell me your name. Jalen Cho, he said. I said, Mr. Cho, what do you do? I work nights at the River Point garage, he said. I park cars. I clean them sometimes. I nodded. Tell me what you saw. Jalen swallowed. I saw him, Mr. Vance. He came in fast, like angry fast. He told me, don't log this. I'm not here. Axel snorted. Wow. Oscar-worthy. Jalen's face went red. Then he pointed at the front of the car. It had a dent, and he said, get that wiped down, now. I said, did he say anything else? Jalen nodded slowly. He said, if anyone asks, you never saw me. I can pay you more than this job ever will. The courtroom was tense, like a rope pulled tight. Axel spread his hands. I tip well. Sue me. I leaned forward and looked at him hard. Mr. Vance, this is not about tipping. This is about responsibility. And then Axel did the thing that ended him. He stood up without permission. He turned his body halfway toward the gallery like he was addressing fans, like the court was his stage. He pointed at Maribel and said, look at her. This is what people do now. They get bumped and they think it's a lottery ticket. Maribel's eyes widened. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked like she had been slapped again. I felt my chest go tight. I said, sit down, Mr. Vance. He didn't sit. He smiled bigger. Or what? And then he delivered the nuclear quote, the one that made every person in that room feel cold. He said, if the court wants a villain, fine. I'll be your villain. But don't forget, poor people are just bad decisions with legs. There was a silence that felt like it lasted a year, 10 seconds. No coughs, no shuffling, no whispers, just air, hanging. I could hear the hum of the lights. I could see Jalen staring at the floor. I could see Maribel's hand shaking so hard the papers in her folder rattled. Then the gallery erupted, not yelling at first, just gasps and angry sounds, then voices. That's disgusting. Did he really say that? A woman near the back said, my son works 2 jobs. The bailiff raised his voice. Order! Order in the court! I didn't move right away. I felt my face change, not because I wanted to scare anyone, because I was genuinely shocked. I had seen a lot in this courtroom. I had seen lies, excuses, tears, anger. But that sentence was something else. It was like he had taken his money and used it as a shield from being human. Axel looked around like he had just dropped a punchline. He expected applause. He got something else. I looked at him and I said one word. Enough. The room snapped back into quiet, like the word had pulled a cord. Axel blinked, still standing. I said, sit down, now. This time he sat. I took a slow breath, because I knew what had to happen next. I looked right at him. Mr. Axel Vance, I said, I want you to listen to me, not your lawyers, not your ego, me. He tilted his head like a kid who thinks he's smarter than the teacher. I said, You brought 12 lawyers. You brought a watch that could buy a used car. You brought a smile like nothing touches you. I paused and let it land. Then you brought your words. I leaned forward. You said, I own this city. You said, everything is a scoreboard. And then you said, poor people are just bad decisions with legs. I repeated it slowly so he could hear how ugly it sounded out loud. Axel's face tightened. It was a metaphor. I shook my head. A metaphor is a comparison, like saying life is a road. But your words were not a comparison. They were a confession. His lawyer tried to stand. I didn't even look at the lawyer. I kept my eyes on Axel. Mr. Vance, do you know what Miss Torres did wrong that night? He scoffed. She was in the way. I turned my palm up. No, she trusted a crosswalk. She worked a night shift. She walked home in the rain because she does not have a driver. I pointed gently toward Maribel. She takes care of a father who cannot speak well. She goes to work so he can eat. That is not a bad decision. That is love. Axel swallowed, but he still tried to look bored. I said, do you know what you did wrong? He shrugged. Allegedly hit someone. I nodded. Yes, and then you ran. Then you tried to buy silence with texts. Then you tried to buy a witness with money. Then you stood up in my courtroom and insulted the very idea of dignity. I let the word dignity sit there. Dignity means a person has worth just because they are human. I said, your money can buy many things. It can buy suits. It can buy lawyers. It can buy a car that drives like a rocket. I paused. But it cannot buy you a second chance at character. Axel's jaw clenched. This is turning into a speech. I nodded once. Yes, because you need it. I said, Mr. Vance, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want a real answer. I leaned forward. If Ms. Torres was your mother, would you call her a bad decision with legs? His eyes flicked, just for a moment, a tiny crack. He didn't answer. I asked again, if she was your sister, would you laugh? He said, quiet, no. I nodded. Then why is it okay when she is a stranger? He looked away. I said, this court is not here to hate you. This court is here to teach you. But teaching only works if you are willing to feel shame. Shame is that hot feeling that tells you, I crossed a line. I took another breath. Today, you crossed a line 3 times. I turned to Maribel. Ms. Torres, I am sorry you had to hear that in this room. She nodded, tears rolling down, silent. I looked back at Axel. Now, we move to sentencing. I sat up straight. Mr. Vance, I said. Stand. He stood, slower this time. I said, this is what will happen. First, I looked at the clerk. Financial penalty. I looked back at Axel. You will pay a fine of $7,500. His lawyer opened his mouth. Axel held up a finger like he would handle it. I continued. That fine is for leaving the scene, unsafe driving, and interference. Then I said, you will also pay restitution. Restitution means you repay the harm you caused. I held up Maribel's medical bill copy. You will pay $18,240 directly to cover Ms. Torres's medical costs, physical therapy, and lost wages. Axel's eyes widened for the first time. I said, and you will pay $620 for her broken phone and replacement shoes. That may sound small to you, but to her it is a week of groceries. Second, I said, license suspension. I looked at him. Your driver's license is suspended for 14 months. He started to speak. I said, you will not drive during that time. Not a company car, not a rental, not a friend's car, nothing. I added, when you return, you will be on probationary driving status for 12 months. That means one more serious driving offense, and you lose your license again. Third, I said, community service. Axel's lawyer whispered fast. Axel stared at me, like this part was beneath him. I said, your community service will not be picking up trash for a photo. I leaned in. It will be real. 240 hours, I said. He blinked. That's insane. I said, no. What was insane was leaving a human being on wet pavement. I continued. Here is the schedule. Every Saturday for 20 weeks, I said, you will report at 7 a.m. to the Providence Mobility and Safety Center. I explained it simple. It is a city program that helps people who got hurt in crashes learn how to walk safely again and get rides to work. I said you will spend 4 hours each Saturday helping with tasks assigned by the supervisor. You will set up chairs, you will carry boxes, you will help people fill out forms. I looked him in the eye. And you will listen, not talk. Listen. I added, every Wednesday evening for 10 weeks, you will also serve 2 hours at Harborline Grocery, the store where Ms. Torres works. He stiffened. I said, you will stock shelves, you will clean, you will do the job Ms. Torres does while her knee heals. I continued, you will be supervised. The supervisor will submit a weekly report to this court. If you miss one shift, we meet again, and it will not be pleasant. Fourth, I said, public accountability. Axel's face tightened again. I said, you will write a handwritten apology to Ms. Torres, not typed, not printed, handwritten. I explained, handwritten means you can't hide behind a screen. Your hand has to do the work. I said, you will also record a 60-second public safety message, a short PSA. A PSA means a public message to warn people. I looked at him. In that message, you will say 3 things. 1, I said, you will admit you made a cruel statement about poor people. 2, I said, you will explain why leaving the scene is wrong. 3, I said, you will tell young drivers that money does not make you above the law. I added, that message must be approved by the court before it can be shown. You do not get to turn it into an ad. 5th, I said, special conditions. I looked at him. You will attend a driver safety class, 8 sessions. And, I said, you will attend a restorative meeting. I explained it simple. A restorative meeting is when you sit with the person you harmed, if they agree, and you listen to how it affected them. I turned to Maribel. Ms. Torres, you do not have to do it if you do not want to. It is your choice. Maribel nodded slowly. I want him to hear me. Axel looked like he wanted to disappear. I said, now, one more thing. I paused. I said, Mr. Vance, you also showed contempt. Contempt means disrespect for the court. It means you treated this place like a joke. I looked at the bailiff. Step forward. The bailiff took 1 step firm. Axel's eyes widened. Wait. I said, you stood without permission. You insulted a victim. You insulted the people of this city. I said, for that, you will spend 48 hours in custody. The bailiff moved in. I described what I saw, because I will never forget it. The bailiff reached for Axel's wrists. Axel pulled back at first. Then he stopped. His face went pale. The room smelled like expensive cologne and sudden fear. The click of the handcuffs was sharp. One of the lawyers whispered, Axel, don't resist. Axel looked at me like this couldn't be real. I said, it is real. I looked at the clerk. Set a review hearing. I said, review hearing date is March 3rd, 2026. Mr. Vance will return to this court. I will check every detail, every hour, every payment. Axel's mouth opened, but nothing came out. The bailiff guided him toward the side door, and as he walked, I saw something change. His shoulders were still proud, but his eyes were finally scared. That night, after court, I sat in my chambers for a moment. I could still hear his words in my head. That line about bad decisions with legs. I don't forget words like that. Words can bruise people even when no one touches them. 3 months later, he came back for the review. This time, Axel looked different. No flashy pin, no smug grin. He had a plain jacket. His hair was less perfect. He walked in quieter. His 12 lawyers were not there. He had 2. I asked for reports. The supervisor from the Providence Mobility and Safety Center wrote that Axel showed up early. He did not talk much. He listened to crash victims tell their stories. He helped carry walkers and boxes. He never missed a Saturday. Harborline Grocery reported he worked Wednesdays without complaint. He cleaned a spill on aisle 4. He stocked heavy crates. He stood on his feet for 2 hours and looked like he finally understood what that costs. Then Marable stood up with her knee brace. She looked at Axel and said, I don't want your pity. I want you to remember I'm a person. Axel nodded. He handed the clerk a letter, handwritten. I read parts of it in my head. It wasn't perfect, but it was real enough to sting. When I looked up, Axel's eyes were wet. He wiped them fast like he was mad at himself for it. I leaned back in my chair. I thought about how fast money can build towers and how slow it is to build a soul. When the courtroom cleared, I sat alone for a moment and looked at the empty benches. In Providence Municipal Court, I see people at their worst and sometimes at their best. Some people think justice is just punishment. But to me, justice is also a mirror. It shows you who you have been, and if you are brave, it shows you who you could become. No matter how rich you are, you still have to stand in front of me the same way everyone else does. Because dignity is not for sale, and respect is the one thing you cannot buy back once you throw it away. My final line, the one I want everyone to remember, is simple. In my courtroom, your money doesn't speak. Your choices do.